So my name's Dan Wallin, and if you haven't tuned in before, we're kind of 4 workshops in, as I mentioned. So I would recommend, if you're new to this, you're probably going to want to go back to the YouTube channel. It's Code with Dan, and make sure you at least catch the very first workshop, because that's where we introduce some of the real basics. So before we jump on in, we're going to do some more CSS today, because that's kind of where we're at. I wanted to address a few things. So for Seth and Jeff and Danny and Greg and some folks that I had set this up with directly, we have been exchanging some info about this and, had some hands-on workshop exercises, things like that. But one of the things I came across an article on JavaScript development. And it was kind of one of those, why would you want to learn JavaScript in 2018? Because there's a lot of programming languages out there. For example, you could learn C#, which I'm a big fan of. That's kind of my background, actually, is in addition to the web, I've done a lot of C#. Or Python is a language you can learn, also extremely popular, especially in some of the data sciences and things like that. Or Java, the company I'm with this week. I'm out actually in Arkansas, so I'm on hotel Wi-Fi. I should mention that, by the way. And I'm hoping the Wi-Fi hangs out here and doesn't kick me off, because every 24 hours I have to log on. So we're going to see how it goes, but I'll keep recording either way, and we'll post the video. But anyway, I'm out this week with a company, which a lot of people have heard of, called JB Hunt. They're a big, massive shipping company throughout the world. And they do a lot of Java. So that'd be another language for like a lot of these big enterprise type shops or companies that you might work with. Anyway, getting back to this article we sent out, and then we'll get into some of the code for today. One of the claims it made, which I actually believe, is that, if you get good at web development, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, these things we're going to be learning in the workshop, that the pay ranges they were looking at were around 74,000 up to, if you're really good and a senior, up to, say, 130,000. And that's actually pretty accurate with what I see as well. With my company, we go into a lot of corporations, small and big. This week I'm with a big one, but sometimes I'm with really small companies. And that's kind of the beauty of this role, is that, number one, there's a lot of jobs out there with JavaScript and web development in general. There's just a massive demand for that these days. Number two, and I mentioned this in a previous workshop, you can pretty much live wherever you want doing this. And then I think the third coolest thing is maybe you are happy in your career right now, which if you are, awesome. But, it's a great hobby, and if you want to make some money on the side, of course, you can do what we call moonlight and just do some contracts on the side. So there's a lot of options. Just wanted to mention that, because just the folks I know personally, that usually when I do these, we have some live people, and we kind of talk about some of this stuff. So I wanted to go into that for some that maybe hadn't heard about that. So as I mentioned, we're on hotel Wi-Fi, so this might be a little bit interesting, this workshop. I'm traveling, and we've been doing these out of my house before. So we'll hope this holds out. But regardless, I'm recording locally, and we'll be posting this as well once I get done in, give me a few days, and I'll try to get that up on YouTube for Workshop 4. So as a quick review from last week, and for the other guys, if you are on, I'll be checking the kind of chat area here. So feel free to leave any notes or whatever there, or questions you guys might have. I'll try to remember to go back to that. What we're going to do today is kind of take what we did last week up a notch. And specifically, we're going to focus on some more CSS. So we kind of wrapped up last week, not a very good UI. Not going to say I recommend yellow as your primary color, but that's not really our focus right now. But last week, we reviewed some of the key tags. So we, talked about the H1 for headers, articles. We reviewed how article really is kind of a big container for other things like sections that you see right here. And then we talked about how, you can put divs there or really anywhere you want, but we try not these days to create what I call div soup. We want to keep our page and our different pages we create very easy to maintain. Now, having said that, now we're to the point in the workshops where we've covered, some basics of the layout. We also looked at a table tag as well in a previous workshop where we might want multiple pages. So before we go into the CSS, I wanted to start off today with kind of some info on how would you link between pages. Because we all go to, whether it's a news site or a sporting site or, whatever you're visiting, we're all pretty used to clicking on links, right? Super easy to do. Well, the way that works is, let's say this, this is a div. Let's do something a little more useful here. And let's make it where we can navigate to some site. So for instance, there's that dev.mozilla.org that we've been going to. Great developer site. How would I make it where when somebody clicks on that, it would go to that site? Now, right now, you'll see, let's refresh this here. I don't think it's saved actually, so let me try to save it. Okay, there we go. Now you can see dev.mozilla.org over here. But notice, I can't click on it. It doesn't really do anything. It's just text. Obviously, it's just a div, a division with some text. So what we can do is use what's called an anchor tag. And this is something we haven't covered up to this point, but it's super easy. All you do is you put a tag called A. You don't actually type anchor. You just type A for anchor. And then to put the path or the website, we call that the domain or the link to where you want to go. In this case, dev.mozilla.org. In fact, let me just open another tab here. Let's go to that. It'll redirect to something else here, you'll see. Okay. So this whole thing, let's say we wanted to link to that. Well, I'm going to just copy that link real quick. Let's go on back. And what we can do is something called an href. This is kind of like a hyperlink, they call it. And we can put in this path here. Now, it is very important, this HTTP, or in this case, HTTPS://. Like if I were to take that off, it wouldn't probably do what we want, right? Because as you know, when you go to various websites, it always starts with HTTP, hypertext, transport protocol is what that stands for, by the way, or HTTPS if it's secure. And secure, nowadays, good websites will all have HTTPS options because we want our data encrypted as we navigate between different websites and things and enter, like forms and such. So I'm going to go ahead and undo, and we'll go ahead and leave that. Now, what we'll do then, let me kind of minimize this guy, is for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that, but I'm going to add something called target equals underscore blank. And then we'll put this dev.mozilla inside of the tag, as you're going to see here, like that. Now, let me save that guy because it's not auto-saving for some reason this time, but I'll go ahead and save it. This should light up here. Might have to refresh it. All right, there we go. So notice now that it turns into kind of a hand. This is the cursor setting, it's called. And right now I have this hand, so I can, click on this and notice it opened up a link to that exact website. All right, cool. So this means this is an anchor. We're linking to, and this is what the href is. It's the reference to the path to the website. So you give it the domain. This would be the domain. And then more than likely you can actually take that off. That just means it's going to go to the English version because they probably have multilingual sites. So let me go ahead and we'll save that, refresh it. Let's do it again. It should still work. So you can see it redirected me to ENUS up top here. Okay. So that is one thing you can do. Now, this is pretty cool because now, if I wanted to link to, say, ESPN.com, because anyone that's watched the workshop knows I like sports a lot, then we could say, ESPN here, kind of save this guy and refresh it. And now notice ESPN, and when I click that, now we could link to it. Now, you'll notice in this case, it looks like it might not have liked actually they might do a redirect. Let's see. Yeah. So it looks like they want www.espn.com. All right. So not just espn.com, apparently, in that case. So, we could change that and fix that. But that's how you can do what's called a hyperlink. Now, most of the time when you're building applications, like me as a software developer, I'm not linking to ESPN or dev.mozilla or whatever, right? We're linking to parts of our app. So what we can do is you can add in other pages. Notice now I'm in obviously just an online editor. So typically these would be files on your hard drive. Right now we're in index.html. But if we come over here in Code Sandbox, you'll notice I can do new file. And then we could do, let's do about.html, something like that. And if we go into about, let's just add a h1 tag for our kind of big header. We'll just say about us. Okay, so that's something we've already covered. All right, so now we have an about us. Now it's not showing because we're still kind of at the root, which is index.html. But let's go ahead and see what we would do now. So what would you do? Would I take this and add about HTML, or what would I do? And I'll have to admit, I haven't actually tried this in Code Sandbox. I can tell you what to do in real life, but we'll go ahead and play with this real quick. No, so first off, I'm going to come back and take this out. And this target blank, I didn't really explain that, so let me back up a little bit. What that did is you notice it opened a new tab, kind of a new browsing window, if you will. If you don't do target blank, then it replaces the existing page. So by putting this underscore blank value for the target, I'm basically saying I would like a blank kind of like empty window, and I would like this website I was loading to be put into that blank empty window. And that's what that does. Now, a lot of times, though, you don't really need that, because in this case, what I would want to do is go from this page just to this other one called About HTML. Let's go ahead and just say About Us right here. We save that. Now, I'm not sure how Code Sandbox is going to do this. I'm hoping it's just going to link in this. It'll change to that. So let's click it. And, well, it kind of tried. So you'll notice there's About HTML, but it didn't actually navigate there. Let me see if I refresh. Okay. Well, apparently it doesn't like that. This is called a relative path. And what this means is this file, I didn't put anything in front of it, right? So this particular file, this about.html file here, is in the same exact folder as the index.html. So the bottom line here is we can actually create different files. This is set up for a different application actually right now called View. We won't have time to go into that, but I suspect that's what's kind of going on here. So you see it's kind of trying, but it's not really working there. That's okay. Let's go back to here. So I wanted to show that real quick because it's kind of a big deal to be able to link between files. So let's imagine that we had, instead of just this H1, maybe we talked earlier about you can do a header. All right. And in the header, you can have what's called a nav tag. This would be for navigation and things like that. Now, this isn't going to look very pretty, but at least we'll get something up here. And in the nav, I might actually put this hyperlink, something like that. Now, this is kind of a little bit wrapping more than I like. I normally like to put the anchor, something like that. So now we would say, all right, when they click About Us, so let's go ahead and save that. I don't know why it's not auto-saving this time. There's probably a setting for that, but let's refresh. All right, there's kind of the start of like a menu. Now, it doesn't look too good, but you get the idea. And then the user would click on this, and then this would replace with About Us when it's a normal kind of editor scenario. Or if you wanted to go to some other website, that's how you're doing it. So every time you click on a link on any website you go to, that's what they're doing right here. This anchor tag, it's called, with an href. And that's how we can link between pages. All right, pretty cool. So now what if we had a products page, which we don't, but let's pretend we did. Then we could do products.html. And we could start to build out a menu here. So let's save that. Let me go ahead and add a new file, even though I can't seem to get it to go to it. We'll call that products, and we'll do another H1. Actually, H1. All right. So now we'd have multiple pages in our site. They would have their own HTML and CSS and all that. But now we can link to those. And let me refresh here. And notice these are what we call inline tags, as we've talked about. They're not block level, otherwise they'd be wrapping there. So let me come on back here and see. Hey, how you doing? I may not say your name right. You'll have to help me with the pronunciation. Hey, Mark, good to see you, man. I don't know if you're still in, but back in Phoenix, awesome. You'll have to fill me in on your little trip you did. I was watching that. Anyway, is it Vinicius? Thanks for tuning in there. So, all right. So this would be how we would build out a simple menu. Now, there's ways, which we'll get into later, that you can actually come on in now and, change the spacing, change the colors. Maybe you don't like the link underneath this. How do we change anything with styles? Well, we go in and we add CSS, which we started to do last workshop. We'll go ahead and kind of get it back into that in just a minute, but I wanted to show this first. So every time you go to a website, when you see that menu up top, they're doing something like this. Now, more than likely, they'll have some other tags in there. In fact, we've already covered a tag called UL, unordered list. But you could actually go in with the UL and make this as well. There's a way to do menus that way. All right, so cool. So we kind of have the start of a little menu. Maybe then we would have the hello world here. I doubt we're going to make that yellow, so let me actually just take that off, save that, and refresh it. Okay, there we go. And now we have the start of a very simple kind of website. All right, cool. Now, having shown that, let's take a look at what we did last workshop. And what we did there was we started to talk about at the end of workshop 3, we started to talk about how CSS styles work. And what we had originally, just as a review, was things like this, where we'd say style equals, and then we could do like background color, black or something, which won't probably look so hot right now with this, just because the text would be also black. And so we could go in. Now, this big is kind of overriding that. And that's why that's yellow still, because we have a class of big. So we're going to come back to that. Anyway, these are inline styles. And what we ended with last time was that while these are valid, a lot of times you don't want to go with an inline style on the tag, because then, and Jeff, who's one of the people that attends live, had mentioned that it's not very reusable to do this. All right, so let me go ahead and just take that off, and let's go review what we did last time then. So the first thing we talked about was something called a tag or element selector. What this H1 with the bracket and the bracket does is says for every tag that's an H1 tag. Now let's review. We have an H1 tag, right? For every one of those, let's go ahead and apply these properties. So we talked last week about font family, and there's lots of different fonts you can embed. You can even download dynamic fonts. So you can make it look whatever you want. Font size was 45 pixels. Just to kind of show that, let's go to actually points, not pixels. Let's go ahead and do this and refresh. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's a little smaller. You'll notice there. And then the color was black. And of course, we could do like navy if we wanted. And let's load that. And now we have navy blue instead. So we're actually influencing the style through this H1 here that you can see. All right. Now this is super useful, because now what I can do is we can actually put these styles in separate CSS files, they're called. And CSS file is, let's just add one here. And I don't know that the way I have Code Sandbox set up right now, it's actually going to let me use it, but let me show you anyway. Let's say we had one called styles.css. All right. Now, the .css means cascading style sheet. I could leave these styles in the style tag. The problem with that is now only this page gets those styles, okay? So normally what you do, and let's try it, but I suspect based on the little hyperlink thing that this particular project setup may not like this, but we'll try it anyway. No time like the present, right? What we could do is this. Let me tab this back over. So I've now moved the H1, let me save that, into this styles.css. Well, now each one of these pages, these three here, they can import this. And now every time there's an H1, remember I did an H1 here, I did an H1 here, and then of course we have an H1 here. Now if I do this, this should all go away once I refresh anyway. See, now it's back to what it was just out of the box. No styles applied. Now I don't know that this is going to like it or not. We'll try what you would normally do, and then I'll have to look into Code Sandbox how they do paths. So I actually hadn't thought about that being an issue, but apparently it is with this. So what you can do is this. So we're in the head section, right? And we talked about last workshop how really the only thing visible in the head section is usually the title will show up on, if we could see the tab here, you would see that show up. Other than that, everything's just kind of invisible, right? You don't ever see this. It just dynamically gets applied. So what we could do is we pulled that out, but I need now to link to this guy so that this style applies to the H1 that we have for Hello World right here. In fact, let's just change that because, our site is so sophisticated now. We might as well do like, welcome to our site or something kind of stupid like that. Welcome me to our site. All right, so let me go ahead and try to take that out. There we go. And save that and refresh. Okay, so it's not going to apply the style yet because, and I have an extra tag up here we're going to fix in a moment, but we're going to link this style sheet into this page. In other words, we're going to kind of hook the two together. Now, the way we do that is we say link and then also href. Okay, so when I do href here, you'll notice that this is called IntelliSense or Code Help. So I'm actually getting some help with on a link tag. What can you do? Well, it's telling me that I can do a href. Now this is a different href though. This is why I wanted to cover anchors to start. Whenever you see an anchor, that's linking to another page with this href. Okay, this reference, hyperlink reference. Whenever you do an href on this is pulling in a CSS file. So we would put styles.css here. And then normally you'll do this relationship is a style sheet. Kind of says what it is. And then you can just end it like that, or you can do a shortcut close tag. Either way works with these. You don't have to do a closing tag on these ones. Now, I suspect it's probably not going to pull that in. Let's go ahead and I'll save it and refresh. And based on the hyperlink, no, actually it did. In fact, it worked too well because remember I think I did black. Oh yeah, so cool. Well, at least that part's working. Let me not do black. And this was now, I think I actually did a background down here. Let's see if I took that out or what happened there. Let's refresh. Let's go back to here. All right, there's our welcome. Well, where did I do the black? Well, we'll go back to here because I do know this color was black. Here's the deal, though. The black that you see here, that's not the background. I suspect that's being picked up from, if you remember, I had typed that in right here. I did save it, though, so that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. It's still applying the black. I'll have to play with that, but let me do this real quick just to override it. You could do white, or I'm going to do what we did last week and do the 3 F's is white. Okay, so now we're kind of back here, a little better. Now, notice that it's scrunched off to the left as well. So let's also fix that up just a little bit. Now, let me see if normally you don't have to do this, but let me see if they care. Let's refresh. Okay, nope, it's the same. So what would you do to bump all this over a little bit? Well, that's where you can do margins and things. So we could do a margin like left on the body. The body is this whole entire part of the screen. Let's say, I don't know, 10 pixels or something like that. And then let's refresh. All right, notice it did work, but the black, I got to find out where that black is coming from because I thought I took that out. Well, table had a border of black. Big color is black. Background color is yellow. I don't think I have black anywhere else. Interesting. Let me look here real quick. Yeah, if you don't see background, then it shouldn't be applying that. So let me take this out really fast. And let me save that. Let's refresh. Yeah, it's coming from somewhere else. That's what I thought. That's interesting. Okay, well, that's all right. Let's go ahead and just get that going, and we'll kind of leave it as is right now. So the background color that you see here of F, that's applying to the body. And it looks like the HTML tag almost is getting a background color somehow. I suspect something else is kind of choking here, but that's all right. So what's going on here is now we're able to influence. We moved over about 10 pixels. You'll see here. We set the background color of the whole body. But again, we did this only in the one page, right? So what's going on here is this is great, but the body is only being influenced for this one page. What about this page? And what about this page? Okay, well, we don't really have a great way to work with that right now. So what I would normally do is we would take that body out and put it over here. Because now when that's pulled into any page, this body would apply to any body tag that we have. Let me go ahead and do that. Let's save this. Let's refresh. All right, now we're back here to, yeah, okay, so something definitely is going on here with the this link. Let me try something really quick here. This is not the normal, by the way. So we're going to kind of play here really quick. Yeah, okay, so it's something about that, the link there. Something about that it doesn't like. Interesting. It might just be how it's loading this potentially. I think it's something to this online editor and the setup that I currently have here, but that's all right. I don't think this will matter, but let me do one more thing. Let's refresh. Yeah, no, it just does not like that somehow. All right, well, for now, we're going to go ahead and let it load like that, and we'll have to come back and figure out what's going on with the black background there. If anybody sees it and goes, oh, you did a typo, then let me know. So, all right, see someone else from Brazil. We got the Brazil guys today. Awesome. So, bottom line here is this is how you would link to that style sheet. Now, I suspect you saw how the hyperlink thing wasn't working so well. So I suspect that might be what's causing the black here. So for now, let's take this out. Now, let me show you what you would do. You could delete this. But let me show you something else you can do. You can do what's called a comment. That's what it looks like. So you do this, we call this the bang character. So, or obviously exclamation, but you do a less than, an exclamation, and 2 dashes. That's the start of this comment. In fact, let's make this a little more obvious. We'll bump this down. Okay, there we go. Tab this over. And then this is how you end the comment. Now, if I save this and refresh, we should be back to the white. Yeah, there we go. Because now I've commented out this link tag that we have. All right, so that's kind of what a link tag does, though, normally. And I'll try for next week, I'll try to have one all ready to go where it likes the link tag, because right now it doesn't seem to like it. Let me show you real quick. If you wanted more info on this, just like we've been doing the whole time, dev.mozilla.org, and you can type in like link, and let's see here, we don't want any of those actually. Yeah, these are, let's just do link element, see if that filters it for us. There we go. The external resource link element, they call it. All right, so it says, specifies relationships between the current document. Now for us, the current document would be index.html, right? And an external resource. Okay, well, our external resource, of course, would be styles.css that you see right here. Now, I'll let you all, whoever watches this at some point, tune in on it. But if we scroll down, they should have an example pretty similar to what I'm doing. Yeah, there we go, right there. Pretty much exactly what I showed earlier. Again, I think it's just not loading it quite right in this online environment, but I'll see what I can do next time to kind of get that to work. Okay. Now, that's the first thing, is that you can move styles like this H1 into a separate style sheet. Okay, then these guys could also have that link tag. So let me go ahead and for now, let's go ahead and fix these up. This isn't enough, right? Like that would load, but that's not a real web page, because what do we have as a review? Well, you always have the HTML. Well, you always have, first off, something called the Doctype we talked about. This says the version, which is HTML5. Okay, so you put that. You'll notice that should be identical. It's uppercase here, but you can do upper or lower. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's kind of the first thing. Then what? Well, then you have the outer HTML tag. And of course, that needs to wrap everything. Get this to come over. All right, then you have the head section. So let's put the head. Remember, that has like the title. So we might have a title for this one that says products. Okay, then if I wanted those same styles also in this page, we could go ahead and put this link tag. In fact, let me just get rid of this because technically I don't need that. There we go. Okay, now I'd want to uncomment it, of course. We'd want to do something like this, but now do you see how the styles could be shared across not just the index.html page, but also the products.html page? All right, pretty cool, because now I can put those styles in one place and the whole website, all the pages could be affected that use this. Okay, and then what are we missing here? We need a body tag if we're doing a proper web page. And okay, there we go. And then we have our products. So it'd be the same exact story for the about. So let me just copy that in. And let's just change this to about us. Now notice again, I have the same exact style sheets, and we probably want to change the title. About us. Okay. Now that's what you're going to see if you go to any website. Look up in, let's just go to even this one right here. If we right-click, view page source, or we could right-click inspect and see this, but let's just do the quick one, view page source. Let's look what's in their head section up here. Okay, so there's the head section up here. And okay, there's the title. There we go, right there. There's a link. Okay, here's a better link right here. Notice it's pretty much what I showed you earlier. In fact, they're doing that little shortcut close tag with the slash. That's actually optional these days in all the newer browsers, but exactly what we just talked about, right? And so now you can go ahead and kind of work with that. Now I want to try something really quick here. I want to see if I grab this URL, if we can actually, if it'll let us hit that directly. Okay. So yeah, this the reason that didn't work, it's pulling in some styles for the edit. Remember how it went black? It's when I'm linking to styles.css, apparently I must need to put those somewhere else for this online editor. And I guarantee somewhere in here it's saying that the HTML background color is black. So I'd have to search for it, but that's what's happening. Okay. So the editor's kind of, this black you see here, it looks like it's somehow overriding our styles because they have their own styles. That's not normal. That's just because we have this online editor I'm using. So I'm going to have to figure out, what folder do you guys want us to use? In fact, let me try this. Some will let you make what's called a static folder. And let me try to move styles into there because some online editors will do stuff like that. And now let's go back to here. Let's take out the comment. And by the way, this kind of tinkering I'm doing here, yeah, welcome to real life. Now, I don't normally tinker with this a whole lot because I do it a bunch, but with other stuff, you kind of just tinker with it until it works. I mean, I've been in this business since 95. So, gosh, getting old, 23 years. And I still got to go look stuff up. And so I kind of want to emphasize that for those that are watching. Everybody has this misconception that I talked about on the first workshop. If you go watch that, you'll hear this at the very beginning that, oh, web developers, they're super smart. They know everything. They just can, just like movies, right? Where, in a movie, you'll see like, da 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 da, and it's just like, wow, they're awesome. No, sorry, that's not real life. Hate to break it to you, but movies are fake. Real life is you tinker with it until it works, and that's just how web development that's how all programming works. Now, yeah, with experience, you can just whip out like I did here, and the tags because you've used them for so many years. But it's not hard. It's just practice. There's nothing hard about it. So anyway, what I wanted to see is let's move this into that folder. And let me leave this as styles and save and refresh. No, still doing that. So let me do static / styles. Let me see if this editor does that. Some of them do. Oh, cool. That works. Awesome. Okay. So now we're using our style. In fact, notice our margin is kind of over here a little bit. Well, I think we're using our style. Hold on. Let's test. Let's go to black on our own now. So we'll save it. And let's refresh. No, okay, it's still not picking it up. Interesting. Well, I thought it worked. All right, well, guess what? We're going to comment that out. We're just not going to use it right now. So there's our comment, and we'll kind of leave that out. And I'm going to have to figure out how this particular editor wants you to do that. Normally what I do is I have a folder, and let me do it like the real way since it's not working for me anyway, called styles at a minimum. Some people might make a folder and call it CSS. It doesn't really matter what you name it. Make a folder. In fact, let's get rid of this one since that didn't seem to do the job. And then in the styles folder, I'll put the style CSS, and you might have more than one CSS file, by the way, because these files can get really big. So you might actually start to break it down into individual functionality, like styles that are used everywhere in the site. You might put in styles.css or whatever you want to call it. Styles that are unique to, say, I don't know, headers. You might make headers.css. And so you can start to break things up so it's easier to find things. All right. Now let me go back, see if, okay, so no questions so far, but let me know if anybody has any questions as we're going. Just let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going here. All right, so normally, again, what I would do, I'll undo this, is now I would link to styles / now styles is at the root of our files. And then, of course, styles.css lives in that folder. So that's why I'm just putting this name here, like that. All right, and then we'll save this and refresh, and I think it's going to go back to, well, no, didn't go back to black, but I don't think it's actually working right now. Doesn't seem to like this folder structure. Yeah, because you notice the background color didn't get picked up, so that's okay. We'll just play with it for now, and I'll read up on how Code Sandbox wants us to do this. All right, so now we've seen how we can have a separate style sheet, which is cool. Let's talk about what goes in these now. Because now we're using this style sheet in every page. In fact, if this was real, we'd have to do style /, and in the about, we do style / like that. Okay, so now let's talk about the different types of styles again. We had one for the body, which isn't really being applied, but we did have it. We have one for the H1, which is also not being applied right now, but so let's put that back in for now. In fact, we can just leave it there, and let's just put that back where it was, like that. Let me tab this over. And one thing you're going to notice as I do this, I'm really into what I call clean code. I like readable code. So notice how I'm taking the time to kind of format this. Because if it's all on one line, it's a heck of a lot harder to read. It's more efficient, by the way, on one line, because there's less white space, we call it, to have to download to the browser. But it's not good for us as developers because we like to have readable, code. So let's go ahead and save now and refresh. Okay, so now this is back in action. You notice that style kicked in, 45 black. Great. If If we wanted that to be navy, we change it, or you could use the hex we talked about earlier or in the last workshop, and now it's navy. Okay, so this again is a element selector. All H1s in this page automatically get that. So just to demo it, let's do one more H1 just as to prove the concept here. Save, refresh, and it should look exactly the same. All right, there we go. Now, just to prove it's only being applied to that, let's change it to a second level header. Save. And notice now it's back to normal. It's just a normal H2 here. So you can see that, yes, it is an element selector, meaning that it's only targeting the H1 tags in this page. Now, if I could get this guy to load properly in this online editor, then we can make it where styles applies to any page, as we were talking about. Okay, now the other thing we talked about last week was, all right, that's great if you just want to target specific tags, but it only applies to that tag. So like we did a table one as well, and that's what's adding this kind of border. You can see the border, 1 pixel solid black, and some padding. You can notice there's kind of 20 pixels around this. That's what's being applied to any table tag. The other thing we talked about, though, and these are something you're going to use more often than not, is what's called Css Classes. The dot in front of this, last week we talked about it, makes this a CSS class. If I took that off, we would be targeting a tag called big, and there is no such thing, not unless it got added last night, which it didn't. So by putting a dot in front of it, this is custom. In fact, I could call this foo if I wanted, and that would be fine. It's not a very good name, but that would be fine. We could use that. So let's go back to just big, because the goal of this one is, in fact, let's just call this big yellow, because it's also setting the background color to yellow. And let me change the font size to actually be bigger. Let's say just 20 point or something like that. And let's refresh here. All right, so now you'll notice big yellow. Notice how it's not yellow anymore? Well, that's because we renamed the CSS class. So if we scroll on down here, somewhere right there, we use class big. Well, there is no class big. So this just defaulted to the normal behavior, which isn't much, just black text. So let's change this to big dash yellow. And load that. All right, and there we go. Now we're back. Notice this is a little bit bigger, and notice that we have the border and the color. So we had a border 1 pixel of black, zeros, red, green, blue, whatever you do with black. It's kind of like all the lights are off, as you would expect. If we wanted it to be white, which wouldn't be a border you could see because we have a white background, we would do that. Or if you want, starting out, it's okay to do that as well. I tend to do the hexadecimal colors, but I usually work in an editor, a code editor, that will help me out with that, so I don't have to memorize these. A lot of code editors, when you mouse over this, a little color picker will pop up. So if you've ever done like Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that, you can actually get color pickers. But this is, again, the online one. Okay, and then we have a background color of yellow. We have the text color is black, you see. Padding, 15 pixels. So we talked about padding the last couple weeks, actually. And then font size is 20 point, so it made it, you can see, bigger. This is kind of the default size of fonts down here. You can see it's bigger. Okay, so pretty cool. So now, this is something we talked about last week, but let's just review real quick. Anytime I want yellow with bigger text, I can do that. We could come down and even outside of this section, we could make maybe another section, say class equals big yellow. And now we can reuse the CSS class throughout our entire website to style things. Now, I'm not recommending yellow again. We're not going to win any awards for this website, but hey. All right, this is my big yellow styled content. Let's save, run that guy. Okay, and there we go. Let's add a line break there so we can see that just a little better. Okay, perfect. No, not great looking though. So what's cool though, let's say that you have big yellow, but you also want one called big blue. Maybe you like navy blue every now and then to highlight a section of your page. Okay, for whatever reason, when I paste this, it seems to like to reformat it flat like this, which is kind of annoying, but let me do this. A lot of times in an editor, you can right-click and say Format Document, but I don't think this one's going to support that. So let's go ahead here, and all right, so what would we do here to make that work? Well, first off, if we wanted it blue, we could call this big blue or big whatever you want. But now we can come in on the color. If it's going to be a blue background, let's just do navy blue. Then the color black's not going to look so good. So let's change that to white. Or again, if you prefer the hex, you could do that. But let's just keep it simple. This is called a named color, the navy and the white here. And then we'll leave the border. So let's go ahead and save that. Let's come on down. Instead of big yellow, let's do big blue. Refresh. Okay, and there we go. So now we have big yellow, big blue. But do you notice anything, just from a common sense standpoint, aren't we kind of duplicating a lot here? Really, the only thing that's different between these two is the yellow and the background color and the color. Everything else is the same, right? So what if we did this? What if instead of putting the color in here, we don't? And we go ahead and do that, and we just call it big. And then here, what if we were to just call this one blue? Let's delete the border. Delete that. Now, I normally don't name my CSS classes with colors, by the way, but for now, let's just say that's what we want. And then let's make another one called yellow. And I'll paste in what I had. Like so. Now we can reuse big, but we can also selectively apply yellow or blue. So you might go, yeah, but can't you only add one CSS class? No. Actually, you can add multiple. So now in here, we could do this. Big, get rid of that. And if I put a space, that means I want the big CSS class and the yellow applied to this section right here. And likewise, we could say I want the big CSS class and the blue, save it, and now we should get the same exact behavior, as you can see. Now, just to prove that's working, let's change this one now to the big and the yellow. And there we go. And you can see we have it. So the bottom line is the CSS class attribute, you can actually add multiple, as many as you want actually, CSS classes. You just put a space between them, and now it's going to pick up all those style properties and all this style properties. Let's go back to blue here. So you can see this is immensely useful, and every website you go to, this is what they're doing. Now, hopefully it looks better than this, but you get the idea that now we can define different CSS classes. We've already talked about how to find, on the dev.mozilla.org site, you can come in and, come up to, let's see, I think my search is hidden up here. Yeah, there it is right there. And, now if you wanted to learn about like the border property, for instance, we already know how to do that. Just search for it and boom, there are some examples here of how to use the border. So most of this is, all right, I want to style it a certain way. How do I do that? Well, if you're experienced, you probably go, oh yeah, you need this CSS property. But when you're new, you don't know. It'd be like me, I can play piano, but only thing I can do on guitar is I can play the bar chords for Rocky Like a Hurricane by the Scorpions. That's about it. That's about it. Definitely can't do the solo. So for me on the guitar, I'm kind of feel like an idiot. I don't know the structure of my finger placement to get the right chords. Yet on a piano, I could play all day long with different chords, majors and minors and whatever. Well, that's just practice. So for those that are new to this, which is probably most of you, that's why you're tuning in, leverage this site, leverage the heck out of this site. And now if you need to change the padding or the border or the color, just go search for what you think you want. If you can't find it, try some others. Now, I would go here first before I would go to Google. the problem with going to Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever is you might find a blog post that shows exactly what you want to do, but it might turn out to be either old. There's a lot of old content out there. I'm guilty of that. I have 2 blogs. One of them I leave up because it's just my old blog. Or it might actually be a bad way of doing it. Like you look at it and you don't know better. So you go, oh, perfect. Look at that. Great. Copy and paste. Boom. I got it. The problem is that a lot of times later on, when you get more experienced, you'll find out that, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have done it that way. Like that wasn't the most efficient. So bottom line, I always go to the source, like dev.mozilla.org first, see what they have to say. Then if I can't find what I'm looking for, then I'll run off to Google or Bing or one of those. All right. Now let me see if anything came in. All right, cool. Jefferson T. Good to see you, man. Next week we'll be back at my house. But yeah, everybody from Brazil, you're welcome to come on up. You can just do it. We'll do this at my house, but no. That might be a little expensive on the flights. But all right, so to wrap up here, we got about 6 minutes left or so for the hour. These are the first 2 types of CSS selectors, all right? And they're the most important ones. You have the header. That's an element selector. It's targeting a tag or an element. That's the same thing, tag or element. We have CSS classes, and the CSS class is actually targeting anything we want because I can come down and now apply that to the header if I wanted. We could say class equals big up here. Let's refresh. And there we go. Notice it's a lot bigger now. Okay, so that's kind of cool. And then if we wanted that to have that background of like the, I don't know, yellow, since we're all in love with these lovely yellow colors. All right, well, actually that's, I found a bug. Ooh, look at that. Some of you might have noticed this when I typed it. See how I'm not closing the header here? That was purely, I probably didn't hit the key hard enough, bottom line, especially on my laptop here. Should have done that, right? Well, look how this style applied to everything. Not what I wanted, right? I just wanted the nav bar to be yellow. Well, what happened is when it didn't see a closing tag for this, basically this big and yellow is applying all the way down to here. Not a good thing. So that would be like a bug in kind of what, it's a typo, really. It's, it's an error on my part. So let me put that in to refresh it. All right, that's what I was expecting. So that's kind of how you can know if you screw some things up from time to time. Now, I'm going to take out the yellow because I think we got enough yellow. Okay. All right. Very cool. Now, the last thing I want to show you today for CSS. So we've talked about the properties. We've talked about external style sheets, how to use the link tag to pull those in, all that fun stuff. There's one more big one, though, you might come across, and that's called an ID selector. A given tag, such as this div right here, or this section, or this table, any tag, really, except for like BRs. Line breaks, you wouldn't want to do this. But you could put in this. Let's just call it my section. Okay, and this is an ID. It uniquely identifies section. Now, you would never want to repeat. You would never want to do like this. Okay, that's not unique, obviously. Now I have my section and my section. So we'd have to do like my section 1, my section 2 or something. But I'm just going to take off the other one. Now, this on its own is useless. All it does is it adds an ID when the web page renders into, I've mentioned this term a few times, it's called the Document Object Model, or DOM. And all it really does is it just gives a unique identifier to that tag when it's loaded in the browser. But right now, it's not doing anything. It doesn't change how it looks, doesn't change how it acts or colors or nothing right now. Now, let me take off the class Big Blue here, just to kind of show you that, all right, nothing up my sleeves. We're going to refresh here. All right, now we're back to normal, right? Even though it's not big yellow anymore. Let's just put this is my ID section, something like that. All right, now I could apply a CSS class to this, or I could do this. And now let's tell you what, let's make that background color again. Navy and color of white. But we'll leave the font size so you can kind of see that no tricks here. Now let me refresh. All right, look at that. See how it's now navy with white text? This is called an ID selector. All right, so we have tag selectors, nothing in front of it. You just put the tag. We have classes. You put a dot in always in front of classes. And then we have ID selectors. Now, I don't, based on some of the JavaScript frameworks I use these days, I don't use IDs as much as I used to. But if you ever come across some CSS that maybe someone else wrote or you're doing some research or something, and you see this hash or pound right on front of the name, that's an ID selector. Okay, so watch if I change this guy to my section 2. Notice how it didn't apply now? Because it couldn't find anything called my section 2. But let's go ahead and go back to that ID of my section and refresh, and there we go. All right, and that's really bugging me. It needs some padding, so hold on. We got to do this. It just wouldn't be prudent otherwise, right? It's too squished. Let's do something like that. All right. Immensely better. Not really, but sort of. Okay, so now you've seen the big 3 CSS selectors. We've seen how you can move CSS into a separate file and that you can link that in using this link tag. And then we also looked at, to start this off, a couple tags. We talked about the header, which we've already covered. Nav was new. Nav, by the way, is a semantic tag. If you remember back, I think it was Workshop 2, Jeff, you brought up, or I think I asked the question, what's the difference between a section and a div? And you said, Jeff, it basically adds additional meaning, or it differentiates, I think you said. This is like a div, this is like a div, the header's like a div, the nav's like a div. It's just that they're semantic tags. They add meaning. If you see a nav tag, you go, oh, it must be navigation. If you see a header, you go, oh, it must have something to do with a header of some type. Could be a subheader, main header, whatever. If you see footer, I don't remember if we did that, but we could do it. Let's just add a BR and a footer. And I showed last one of the times how you can do a copyright, 2018, your name in a footer. And then, of course, it's a footer. So those are some of the semantic tags we've already looked at. Now you can see that, down there. All right, so to wrap up then, I hope that gives you all, anyone that watches this anyway, a little better idea about some of the CSS classes. The reason they're so cool is now anywhere I want to apply those classes, I can reuse it in a web page. And I don't have to duplicate the inline styles. Remember, we were doing this, put a bunch of properties right there. Well, now I don't have to copy and paste those. Now, if I want this multiple times, I'd have to copy and paste that, but that's okay, because now if I ever make a change to big, that'll affect everything over here that has that CSS class applied. And then getting back to our starting point today, we talked about the nav, and then I showed how you can do hyperlinks. Let's just add one that we know works to wrap up here. Since those two, I'm going to have to figure out why it doesn't like those in this online editor. Remember, we said you can do something like this. I think this one will work for ESPN. And we'll just say ESPN. Put the hyperlink as a substitute, and this should work. It depends on how they like it, but let's run that. And all right, it looks like I may have to link to a separate tab on this. I don't know that this iframe likes to navigate. So let's do a target, and remember it was _blank. If I can type it. There we go. Save it, refresh it. And now I'm hoping there we go. Now a new tab pops up, and we're kind of ready to go. All right. So that will wrap up this workshop. I hope that gives you a better idea on CSS. So if you haven't already, the kind of homework assignment, it's in once I post the YouTube video, I'll put the link again. But there is a homework assignment for Workshop 3 where you're going to create a brand new site. So for Workshop 4, what I'm going to have you do, and I'll try to add this maybe later tonight when I get a chance to eat dinner still, but is refactor out anything you did with the Workshop 3 kind of homework and take those styles and move them out to a separate style sheet. Literally, it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes at the most. That means you're going to have to learn how to do this link tag and stuff like that. Now, here's the URL. Let me make sure everything's saved. Yeah, it looks like it is. So this URL right here, I don't know that the Zoom actually works on this, but is where I'm currently at. In fact, I'll try to post that in the YouTube video as well. All right, so let me see if there's any other questions here. Good practice to give. Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick. And Tiago, hopefully I'm saying that right. Yeah, there are some kind of best practices for names. Number one, make the name as clear as possible. I'm going to have to admit, I'm not a big fan of my yellow or my blue. I did that to be like really obvious. In fact, technically, this is like BG yellow, text color blue, but that's way too long, right? So one thing I like to do is, number one, be as explicit as possible. In other words, while big is nice, instead, you might say big header. Now, notice that I did a dash. I used to do this. This is what a lot of people used to do. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. But a convention that a lot of people follow nowadays is every time a new word kind of starts, instead of uppercasing it, big header, we could do big dash header. Now, this is actually a convention. I don't know if it'll be next workshop. We'll see where we're at next time. But if you go to getbootstrap.com, this is a CSS library I use. And if we go to their documentation, let me just kind of show you they do this. So let's go find some of their stuff. So see call-sm, that stands for small. Let's keep on going down, see what else we can find here. They don't have any. Okay, there we go. This is with 100%. With dash 100%. Call stands for column. Column 5. Anyway, I just wanted to show you the dash. That's a pretty common thing nowadays where if you have a little bit longer name, like if I did a big header or header big, I would just put that dash. So that's good. Here's what I'd recommend. If you go search for CSS Style Guide, there's tons of these out there. So CSS Tricks is a great website for CSS, by the way. So let's run off to this real quick. I have not seen this page, but this is a style guide, it's called. It's basically guidance on how you should write your CSS. Now, there's a gazillion opinions on this. So don't assume that this is like the right way. Honestly, there is no right way. As long as it works, I promise you my mom, she doesn't care. She's not right-clicking view and source. I can guarantee you that. She's not into doing that. So this would be an example, though, of what a style guide looks like. And, in fact, this is on a site called GitHub. I host a lot of my code on GitHub. And here is a little primer for GitHub about styles. So they have some more info here you guys can look at if you wanted. Now, they probably have some others. Here's a Google style guide for CSS and HTML. Here's idiomatic CSS, CSS wizardry. Smashing Magazine has some really good articles. A lot of good stuff on Smashing Magazine. ThinkUp, I haven't heard of that one. WordPress. Some of you might use WordPress. Their style guide. So you can see there's no right one answer, but what I would do is go find a style guide that, you read through it and find one that seems to be pretty popular because, if you find one just some guy named Dan Wallin wrote and only one person's looked at it, it's not very well vetted, right? So find something that seems to have a fair amount of momentum behind it, gets a lot of feedback. The more feedback, the better on these things, because some people view it as criticism. I view it when people criticize my stuff as just feedback. Roll with the punches and kind of learn from it. Sometimes people are idiots and they say things you're like, no. It's like you don't know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So bottom line, that would be a good place to start. And if I go back, there's tons more on here. It just goes on and on and on for style guides. In fact, I think even, oh shoot, my mind's going blank. Who's the big, you can go rent a house or apartment anywhere you want to go, and my mind's totally going blank. See, this is what happens when you get a camera in front of you. Airbnb, thank you. Now I'm thinking of it. They even have a style guide. And Airbnb has some pretty popular style guides for like JavaScript. So there you go. Here's a style guide you could get to. Am I saying this is the one? No. You need to find one that you like, or if you're working for a company, you need to ask them, do you have a style guide? Especially if I'm doing a contract, I would want to ask them, do you have a style guide you guys like to follow? And then I would try to write my code to follow that style guide. So anyway, sorry for the long answer, but hopefully that helps you out a little bit. So, all right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and we'll wrap up. So thanks everybody that made time out of your busy night to tune in. Again, those that you're new to this and you want to switch careers, stick with us. Go view other videos as well. Don't just wait for the ones I'm doing. I'm here to tell you, you can do it. I told the story. If you haven't watched Workshop 1, go watch it. I started with nothing. Not only nothing as money, but also nothing as knowledge. I had zero knowledge of any of this, and now I have an entire consulting company and do training and all this fun stuff. Not because I'm a genius, purely because I worked my butt off to learn this stuff, and I'm telling you, you can do it. So if you're new to this, you want to switch careers, you just got to go for it. All right, with that, I'm hoping next week I'm back home next week in Arizona. So we'll hopefully do the normal stream from there, but it looks like the Wi-Fi held out. Hey, awesome. Thanks, Hilton Hotels. But we'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot.